Hello and welcome to the first episode of the brand new season of What the FinTech, the podcast from the team behind FinTech Futures and the Banking Technology magazine. My name is Paul Hindle, editor of FinTech Futures, and to kick things off on this first episode of 2026, we're joined by Ted Paris. Ted, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Excellent, and it's great to have you here. How's your new year been so far?
All good so far. Had the family all together for the holidays. I enjoyed that. Kids are now of age and off in school or other things, and so do miss them desperately. And the cold has not made it any easier, but I can't complain. Could be a lot worse, to be honest.
Yeah, that sounds great. So I guess just to get started here, then, would you like to quickly let us know a bit more about yourself and your role at TD Bank?
Sure. So I run what we call analytics, intelligence, and AI for TD Bank within the US. I've been with the organization, wow, I think it's been about 10 years now, and I've had a number of different roles. I'll say that my background really is in general management with financial services institutions. So I've run product and strategy for line businesses such as our direct investing platform, have been with several institutions, including Barclays Citibank in the past. I've also been in management consulting at different points and around the globe. So I've worked out of Spain, England, US, Canada, and done consulting in a variety of other markets. So it's a little bit of my background.
Excellent. Sounds great. And again, it's great to have you here, and thanks so much for taking the time out to speak with us today. So on the show this week, we'll be exploring the evolving role of AI in financial services and how customers are embracing AI within banking. We'll dive into the findings of TD's recent survey on how Americans perceive and interact with AI in finance, and covering key insights about adoption barriers, trust, and the tools resonating most with consumers. We'll cover how TD Bank is leveraging AI to enhance accessibility, improve the customer experience, and innovate through initiatives like its Layer 6 office, while also touching on the future of agentic AI and its transformative potential in banking. So to start off then, Ted, as mentioned there, TD conducted a survey last year on how Americans are perceiving and interacting with AI. What would you say were the key takeaways and data points from that survey?
I think several things. One, what's interesting is that we see consumer behavior is evolving, right? And people are embracing AI more and more. We're in a space in which, as opposed to being like other emerging technologies, one in which it's a domain of subject matter experts, that it's more so something that's democratized more broadly. And that's obviously facilitated by the fact that you've got all of these AI-friendly tools people literally have on their phones, right? Whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's Perplexity, Gemini, et cetera. And so the study gives us some insights into understanding consumer behavior, which is obviously crucial for us as we try to ensure that our considerations of utilizing different tools and emerging technologies are consistent with what our customers would be looking for and how they're going to then embrace it, that we meet them in their journey. I'd say there's a lot in it, but I think if I was taking away one big theme that stood out for me and that I reference over and over again is it's a three-sided coin. I say that because my mom used to always say in an argument, there's more than two sides to the story. There's also that rim around the other side of the coin, right? That third part. And it starts off with the insight that our customers and prospects are both confident and curious in this space. A lot of them, I think 89% or so, said they're comfortable with it. A significant number, obviously, also familiar and using it and even trust it as much, if not more, than certain media news outlets and influencers. So they're using it and they're confident and they're curious and exploring it. The other side of that coin is they're also cautious. They're cautious and concerned a bit, right? As you can imagine, the whole notion of privacy, data security, things like that give them rise to concern that, well, what's happening here? And the whole notion of how is it going to change my life and my job and the way I work and things like that. So there's the cautious and concerned side on the other side of the coin. But then on the rim, the third side is that piece that says there's some contradiction in all of that. And there was contradiction from a couple of dimensions, things that surprised me. One was that typically the younger generations are the more familiar, the more experimental, the more knowledgeable about emerging technology. They're adopting it sooner. And it's no different here in terms of, at least what we're seeing in the activity with Gen Zs and millennials outpacing the Gen X and boomers. However, if you ask them questions about really what is possible today and how is it being utilized, honestly, the Gen Xers and baby boomers have a more realistic expectation of what it can do and what it is doing. Less conspiratorial, if you will, more frank and practical about it. And then the other piece that I think is really interesting and has implications for us as we think about how do we use this capability is the fact that as much as people say, I'm worried about being disintermediated by the capability. I want to be able to engage somebody at some point in time. And I want to have that connection. I don't want to lose that connectedness. There are times in which they would say, hey, you know what? I prefer to actually be dealing with an agent, a virtual assistant of some sort, especially in spaces in which somebody may not feel very good about what it is that they're engaging in or what the conversation might be and how they feel about themselves in it. Maybe they're feeling that they're very late in their financial planning cycle and they're like, I'm a little bit embarrassed about that. I'd rather talk to some anonymous bot to get up to speed before I begin to engage in that conversation. And that transcends or enters into a number of different spaces. So I thought that was really one of the more interesting pieces and impactful things that we got to consider. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. And you mentioned the survey found that 68% of Americans are at least somewhat familiar with AI, but many yet to unlock its full potential. What do you see as the biggest barriers to adoption then? And what do you think financial institutions can do to bridge this gap and help consumers better understand and utilize AI?
Yeah. As you think about that piece, consumer adoption, I think the most important underlying concern there is going to be with the trust piece, because it's not about not having access, unlike any other emerging technology in our recent history and its evolution. This has come about so fast. As I mentioned before, people have access to it on their phones, they're doing it, and they're hearing about it, and it's just there more so than ever before. But the concern is more so around trust than I think anything else. And I think there's a number of things that institutions can do in that regard. One, there's a bit of education and assurance. So, for example, what we seek to do is make sure that we're meeting customers where they are in their journey. And I want to make sure that they understand who they're interacting with, what it is they may be interacting with. And in our space, we maintain what we call human in the loop. So before anything lands in the hands of an end client, somebody will have, within an organization, will have vetted it, seen it, interpreted it, made sure that it was ready for prime time, if you will. And so they are actually dealing with a human. It's that what the AI has done has facilitated, has expedited, has enabled that agent or individual to be much more quicker and informed and or expeditious in terms of delivery of that service. So we need to make sure people are aware of that thing, of those pieces. Second, we go through a lot in terms of ensuring the integrity of anything that we do, whether it's AI or other types of models, other types of services that we put out there. We have a framework around managing risk that includes assessing the privacy, information security, model accuracy, transparency, validity, fairness. We have a series of principles that we apply before we approve anything that's going to go to market in terms of principles of fairness, as I was mentioning. Once it's in market, we have ongoing monitoring and different types of safeguards to make sure that it continues to perform in the way that we'd expect. And there's a whole series of other elements within that framework. And so, one, making sure that we meet the customer where they are on their journey, making sure that we're educating them about what it is they can expect and how that journey is unfolding, if you will. And then third, that piece around making sure that behind the scenes, we're doing all that we need to do and know we need to do to ensure that's going to be something that is trustworthy, valid, fair, transparent, as we do with any of the models that we build and deploy.
Excellent. Yeah, and I guess building on that human in the loop you mentioned there, I mean, how do you see the role of AI evolving in a way that balances innovation with the need for that human connection in banking?
Yeah, I think honestly, the journey that I see us going on is one in which AI is going to be a meaningful complement and enhancer to that human connection. It's the additional layer that's going to allow us to evolve the way that our colleagues are able to interact and work with our customers and service and support our customers. I sincerely believe we're going to see an elevated level of engagement and provisioning of support, of advice. I mean, you hear these things thrown out, but I see it in action as we look at how you evolve and transform processes using these capabilities. Ones in which what you're seeing is an agent, somebody in the store, somebody who's servicing a client and have been typically focused on a transaction, answering, a one-up question, to now being more able to provide advice. The type of activity that they're doing now in terms of how they're engaging, it's around judgment, it's around decision-making, it's around giving counsel in a manner that's creative, offers care, and individualized consideration as to how they're engaging with the person, what the person needs, what the person is looking for, and what they need in a very personalized way. And so I do believe that you're going to see that enhanced level of activity, just because now all of our colleagues get to step away from the more redundant, repetitive tasks that aren't so interesting and do the things that they value most and are interested in doing for a customer. And then the customer also values most.
Excellent. Yeah. And I guess on that front, I mean, what specific AI tools or features are really resonating with customers at the moment?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, some of these are in fact just behind the scenes and customers are benefiting from them. And they know it's not as though they call it out on the spot. So for example, there's a few things that we've gone public to market with in terms of sharing that we've recently rolled it out. One of them is around something called a knowledge management solution for our contact centers, in which really what we've enabled our contact centers to do is naturally our agents, when they're on the phone, and boy, I'm really impressed because I was sitting with some of them not too long ago watching this capability in action. And they're people who are multitasking. They're hearing you, they're listening to what you're saying, they're looking up your information, they're looking up how to solve or respond to whatever that may be. But as you can imagine, there's so many different questions and things that can come up from a variety of different products and services and client segments and offerings. And so there's a lot to get up to speed on. It takes time for somebody to learn all of that. The people who've been around who've got off the top of their head, they're people who are new, and there's a lot of young people coming in all the time in these roles. And what this knowledge management solution does, it enables them to simultaneously, in natural language, query the questions that you might have, and it gives them then a natural language response that they can look at, quickly interpret and understand, sourcing from what are literally hundreds of different policies and procedures that could be applicable. It presents it to them. It sources it quickly, so they see it immediately, and they can click on it really quickly behind the scenes and see, is this what I was looking for, to confirm that this is in fact what they're looking for, and then provide the response. And as you can imagine, it's not just helping that one individual agent service, which then translates into a much better experience for a colleague or for a customer, right? A customer is not going to be put on hold as long. A customer is not going to have to wait. But that customer is also going to get the same answer, whether Ted was the agent, whether Paul was the agent, whether Jen was the agent, whether Lindsay was the agent. There's consistency, which is an elevated level of training that's difficult to get to when you're dealing with literally thousands of people in this call center. So that's one of the solutions. And I think you can kind of see how that then also gives them the capacity to elevate their conversation, as opposed to focusing the time they've got just on the yes, no answer, if you will. They can tell you, hey, this is how it works. Can I help you make sure that that's getting done right? Do you need any other guides? Is there anything else you're looking for? Here's something I noticed that might be interesting to you, et cetera. So it gives you a little more of a palpable example as to how that works.
Excellent. Sounds great. And I've been having a lot of conversations about agentic AI in particular over the last year. When it comes to banking and managing finances, do you think at some point we'll see fully autonomous agents acting proactively on behalf of users?
I think that there'll be a range of things. And one, I'm a big proponent of what agentic can do, because I think that's just another tool in the toolkit that can help facilitate, again, the types of activities that the agents I was just referring to, our colleagues, to help facilitate their work and enable them. I think it really depends on low risk versus what I'll call high stakes activities. Some of the things that are very easy to do, moving money, paying bills, detecting fraud, things like that, absolutely easy to get through, get done, do in the right way, very deterministic in terms of solutionings. And there'll be some things that are even what we call probabilistic that'll be involved there as well. But the important thing is that, again, they're going to support and facilitate our ability to get to the more important aspects of the conversation that somebody wants to have when they're engaging with a financial services organization. When you're thinking about things from a long-term planning perspective, whether it is your long-term or more complex borrowing needs, whether it's your more long-term or complex investing needs, and you need that advice, you want to get to that, and it'll help get you there. It'll help pull together the information for the advisor as they're getting ready to sit down and meet with them. It's going to help make sure they got a more holistic picture. It's going to help then prepare for all that, and maybe even then later on execute on some of the chosen purchases or transactions that need to happen subsequent to that. So I see it, again, it's a complement. It's a layer in the overall relationship and experience that our colleagues will have with our customers.
The Banking Tech Awards USA nomination deadline has been extended, now to the 27th of February. If you haven't submitted your entry yet, now's your chance to showcase your achievements and celebrate the best in banking and fintech. To find us, simply search Banking Tech Awards USA and get started. Don't wait. this is your final opportunity to get involved.
Yeah, and I mean, looking back at the surveys where you mentioned earlier, obviously trust being a big factor when it comes to AI, the survey also highlighted that concerns that remain around data security and privacy breaches in particular, and also a lack of transparency in AI decision making. How can banks address these concerns, you think?
Those concerns are not new. They're just now emerging or popping their head up in a different and new space. So the good thing is we have a lot of experience in terms of navigating many of these concerns, be they data privacy and security, be they the ability to make sure that what we're doing and the solutions that we provide, particularly in terms of these models, are accurate, valid, fair, transparent. You have interpretability in them. We have principles, we call them principles of AI, that we apply before we decide whether a solution is one that we want to deploy, to make sure it's going to meet our customers where they are in their journey. And then when we do, it conforms to that framework that I've just kind of articulated there. We have a practice of ongoing monitoring of these models to make sure they maintain all of the integrity of the elements that I was describing: fairness, transparency, privacy, accuracy, and things of that nature. And I think that it's really making sure that those practices continue to be applicable in this space as well. I think for ourselves, and I'm sure for most institutions, they absolutely are.
Excellent. And the survey also highlights that 65% of respondents see AI's potential to expand access to financial tools. Can you share how TD Bank is using AI to make financial services more accessible, and particularly for underserved communities?
There's a lot of stuff we're doing both with AI and other ways to do that. And whether it's AI, whether it's digital in general, expanding access in terms of things being available 24/7, whether it's with the capabilities that AI offers in terms of speech recognition, text recognition, audio, image, and video. There are spaces that then allow you then to communicate in ways in which, in fact, we've launched something called TD Accessibility Advisor, and it's an accessibility web tool. We did it about a year and a half ago, and it's one of those things that's available free. It's free on Chrome or the web store, and it helps by displaying websites in different modes for visually impaired. Whether it's the dark mode, it helps with different formats, giving options with the monochrome, even has adjustable sizes of text and dyslexia-friendly formats. I mean, there's a lot of ways that you can imagine that you're not limited now to just the standard form of interaction. You got to listen over the phone or you got to go into a branch. It's omnipresent, and it gives users the dexterity to kind of choose their mode of interaction, which is just one of the ways in which things become more accessible, no?
Yeah, no, sounds great. And TD Bank's Layer 6 office is central to its AI strategy. Can you tell us a bit more about that, how it works, and then maybe share some of the latest innovations or projects coming out of there as well?
So Layer 6, for those who don't know, is our in-house AI Center of Excellence. It's a team that does research and development of solution. It's a group that we acquired back in 2018. We were very fortunate to be able to bring them on board. While they're based out of Canada, we've also brought a contingent down. We announced last year that we're setting up Layer 6 offices in New York. So we have a team of resources there dedicated to our US activities. And there's a whole slew of different solutions or capabilities that they've been involved in developing and deploying. As I mentioned, the KMS solution that we launched, and I mentioned earlier in the conversation, for our contact center, heavily involved in deploying that. They're involved in helping us roll out agentic solutions as well, things that include what we call data democratization and insights. So the ability to actually query not just qualitative information, but tabular and time series data and do predictive analysis. In fact, they launched recently something called TD Prism that really is a foundational capability. Consider the equivalent to how a large language model is foundational for knowledge management. TD Prism is the type of thing that is foundational for being able to do similar queries at scale and analyses and insights at scale for tabular or time series type data. So those are the types of things that Layer 6 is heavily involved in for us and developing and innovating around. And again, fortunate to have them.
Excellent. And how does TD Bank ensure that its AI investments align with consumer needs and expectations then?
There's a lot in that space too. I think one, you mentioned the survey. That's obviously one meaningful way in which we do that. And we do that periodically. And in fact, we have another one that we're going to be deploying soon. But the point is we reach out to market to understand customer needs, to be able to ensure that we can meet them where they are in their journey. Two, very much led with a business, I'll call it lead or customer experience type of insight. So while I manage a team of individuals who are accountable for analytics, insights, and AI, we don't decide what we're going to deploy. We're working with the businesses who understand their clients, understand the customers and the needs that they have and their preferences. And then that helps us decide what we're going to do. There's no little skunk work science projects in which we're just looking to do things that are interesting from an analytical or data engineering perspective. No, it's got to meet a need. And beyond that, there's ways in which we gather insights directly through customer behaviors, our ability to observe what customers are doing, what products they're preferring, what channels they're leveraging, what services they want more of. We also hear feedback. You get both customer complaints and recognitions, where you're hearing from them in writing. What is it that they're challenged by, and what is it that really excites them and they've appreciated and are benefited from? And so you pull all that together, and there's a lot of customer insights. We have insights that we call voice of the customer, literally, that we draw upon to make sure that we're hearing them, we understand them, and the things that we're doing are meeting them where they are in their journey.
Excellent. Looking ahead then, I guess, what's next for AI in banking? Then how do you envision it transforming the way consumers interact with their banks over the next 5 or 10 years?
I see AI in banking continuing to go down the space where AI is the enhancing layer of capabilities that enable us to do more for our customers, to enable our colleagues to do more for our customers. I see it as now no longer just being the domain of insights, which is traditional analytics and traditional AI, into the domain of how do we transform the way we deliver our services to make them simpler and faster? How do we enhance the capacity and roles of our colleagues so that they can do more and be more meaningful in terms of the interactions they have with our customers, and that the experiences that our customers have with us are more meaningful, simpler, more human, and obviously allow us to deepen the relationships that we have with those customers. So I think AI helps us. It's the backbone of all those things.
Thanks again, Ted, for chatting with us today. To close out the podcast, we have our now infamous FinTech Jails. This is where we ask for an industry term, buzzword, or trend that you've seen or heard enough of. Or, of course, you can advocate to free one of the previously incarcerated terms. So what would your selection be for this week?
If I'm going to put something into the jail, it would be AI slop. All right, because I think that it really doesn't reflect the true underlying issue that we're talking about. Typically, it's talking about the fact that there's errors, there's hallucinations, sometimes intentional or not. And it has implications for then downstream work if you're getting something wrong upstream when something is quote unquote slop. The fact, I'd add back in a word that addresses it, and that is AI innovation. Because you can take measures in terms of fine tuning, establishing certain guardrails around it so that you don't get the hallucinations, you don't get the issues that are associated with AI slop. And so if I could take a word and put it in, it'd be AI slop for the jail, but I'd like to take one out, and that's AI innovation.
Excellent. Yeah, well, I think sometimes AI slop is a decent definition of some of the generated content that I see online these days, but I certainly do think it's being used a bit too much now, and I'm more than happy to throw AI slop into the jail this week then as the first new inmate of 2026. And as you say, I'm happy to bring AI innovation out of the jail as well, so we can put an end to AI slop once and for all. I'm going to have to wait and see over the course of the year whether someone wants to advocate to free that one again, but I have a sense that it might be in there for a while. So, Ted, thank you so much again for joining us for the podcast today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, that's all we have time for this week. Thanks, of course, to Ted for joining me. As for FinTech Futures, you can find us online at fintechfutures.com, and be sure to follow us on LinkedIn to keep up with the latest fintech news. If you like this podcast and our other episodes, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, or your favorite podcasting service to get notified about future episodes. Thanks as well to Arama for editing this podcast. You can check them out at arama.tv. As always, thank you very much for your support, and we'll see you soon for another episode of What the FinTech. But until then, goodbye.